Hello, welcome to Books to Read. I'm Matt Hernandez, and today I'd like to tell you about Ace Any Test by Ron Fry. If you are a student and you're taking any kind of course with a test, you should read this book. It's a short book, and frankly, when I was in college, I wasn't always a great student myself because I would sort of like overstudy a bit. When I went to college, well, after the Navy, I didn't really have any great study skills. Um, and I didn't have them. So what I would do is I would just like overstudy, and like at nighttime, I would sit there in front of the computer trying to study, and I'd be tired, and then I'd just be online just looking at random things, just passing the time, but really I had no more focus. I didn't know how to give myself good breaks, and I didn't always think I was eating well or something like that. And so in this book, as I will show you, it does have very concrete strategies for as you're taking the test. And I didn't quite see where the book was going at first, but in this book, the author just kind of tells you like what is it to be a good student. And I think a lot of those suggestions are really important. It's not just whenever you take the test, but what are you doing every day in class? What are you doing before class? How well are you planning and prioritizing your time up to class, and then a little bit of even after that? So I'm going to show you some highlights from the book, and one of the last parts from either chapter 7 or chapter 8 is the author tells us that if you always show a lot of enthusiasm in the class, the instructors will take this into account, and that's probably happened with me. I probably showed a lot of enthusiasm at times, and the instructor had really liked that, and maybe they boosted me a few points for that. I remember in a community college, in one class I took, the professor said, "Yeah, so we're supposed to have these office hours, and no one shows up and stuff." And I never even thought about the office hours. It might have been like my last term or second to last term, something like this, and I never went to any kind of office hours. And then I thought, wow, in the future I'm going to go to office hours. Well, then later on, I did have to go to office hours because when I was in the Air Force Reserves later on, I like missed my first week at the university, because I got my associate's degree and I decided to go like that, and then go to the university afterwards. But then I missed like my whole first week. So ever since then, I tried to go to the different teachers' office hours, and at least one time. And then because of it, my last semester I had two independent studies classes, which was pretty nice. So in one class it was just one-on-one, and then another class it was the professor and two students, just me and another guy. So yeah, I think this is a terrific book, and I think that if you can understand what it is to take the test during it, and sort of like follow the logic of it, and just follow the pattern, the common sense patterns during it, it's going to help you out a lot. And if you can keep those in mind, I mean, you're not going to be able to think about these strategies if you don't know them, and you have the stress of the test. You got the timer there, the room's really quiet, and all this stuff. But if you already know these strategies, then once you need them, then they can really help you. And so, yeah, if you're taking any kind of course, and if there will be a test for this course, then you should read this book. So I'm going to show you some of the highlights in it, and I really hope you enjoy. So here's the book, Ace Any Test by Ron Fry. I chose a few chapters and a few parts about it that really stuck out to me. So here, chapter 1, Overcome Your Fear. And here we have, sometimes it's not the fear of failure, but the fear of success. Compete with yourself. So when I look at this part, it's not the fear of failure, but fear of success. If you pass your classes, you got to do the next thing in life. So I kind of see it that some people find a kind of normalcy in life, and we become comfortable with it. And if you do well, then the next journey in life might be a little bit scary. I like this next part, compete with yourself. I think so many people might be so busy comparing their own lives with other people's that they are not so worried about what they need to do and what their own goals are. if you know somebody else and they always do well, don't worry about that. How do you do? And how can you improve what you do? So I like this part. You don't have to join their club. So if you hear people constantly complaining about their classes and stuff, or constantly complaining about the grades or something like that, try not to join that, especially if it's wearing you down and you have other things to worry about, and it can be stressful because especially if you're working on your bachelor's and you have all these different classes of different subjects that are unrelated, and it's a bit much to process. It's a bit much to balance. I like this next suggestion. Get permission to retake old tests. I would have never have thought about that, and I can put you at ease to sort of know the type of tests you might get. If you get a test that's like 50 multiple choice questions, and then you get like 2 essay questions, and then that's what you're probably going to get from that instructor. So I like this. We get a list, and we get a few of these lists throughout the book. How to lower your AQ, anxiety quotient, and I like these. So you can ask yourself these kinds of questions. They'll put your mind at ease. Chapter 3. When should you start studying? So I like the suggestion here that if you're in a class, the instructor, they might give you some cues about what's on the test. And I never did well with that. I was never great at note taking. I might sort of overstudy or something like this. I really didn't do myself a lot of favors. There were different teachers that I would be so involved in the class. I'm always raising my hand. I'm always smiling at different things or frowning maybe at other things and stuff, but I was almost always very engaged in the classes. But I don't think I would look for cues like this. And I don't know how true or what the percentage of this one happening is, but I think it's helpful. So it says here, looks aren't everything but. So it's giving some suggestions about how can we do different types of note taking. Now I remember, I think it was like in middle school or high school, we kept being told like the Cornell method of note taking. So on the left hand side, you have like a small topic of what you're taking notes on, but then on the right hand side, you'll write so much more. And they tried showing us these different note taking methods a little bit, but it didn't really stick with me. But I think that for you should try one of these so that way you can write as much as possible in as simple a way as possible. So that way you can get all the important information. Because if you're trying to write everything they're saying, you might not get it all. Okay. Chapter 5, essay tests. Right on. So I like this. Think before you ink. You need to budget your time for an essay. So, as it says here, if you have 5 questions in 50 minutes, it doesn't take an Einstein to figure out that you have 10 minutes per essay. When the time you've budgeted for the first question is up, immediately move on to the next. So I wonder if we've all had that feeling whenever you feel so eager to answer a question, you just write and write and write and write, and then you forget about the other questions because you feel so confident that the instructor is going to give you the highest possible grade for this one, and then it's going to carry on for the rest of the test. I don't know. I mean, maybe some professors might have some kind of a leniency like that if you answer a question extremely well, but then it doesn't quite carry over to the answers on the other essay questions. Okay, I like this. I like this one also. And so at the end of this chapter, the author goes into a deeper meaning of each of these plus more. So keep in mind whenever being told to describe, compare and contrast, and to argue, because you really want to answer the question properly. If you're being asked to argue something and then you describe, you compare and contrast it, then yeah, you're going into a lot of depth about the subject, about the topic. But don't we want to just be able to answer the question well and correctly the first time instead of just writing too much and hoping that you got it? So yeah. Okay. Sorry, I needed to make this slide a little bit bigger, but I really like this one. The best organized beats the best written. Now, I've never had this issue on essay writing for a test, but I have had this issue when just writing an essay. I'll have all the points mentioned, but then the instructor won't like how I organized it. They really would have preferred for me to organize my thoughts better, and by organizing my thoughts better, I would have gotten more points. So and then I might try to argue a little bit. Oh, well, can I get a few points like this or something like this? I would almost always just accept the grade of what it is, but I would just wonder, like, come on, it's there. What you want in the essay is there. So I think this is an important point. Organize your thoughts better than just be well written. If you write, have the crux of your argument be on the top, have it be the first thing they read, and then maybe give the details after, but have them see the argument first. If you give all these details and you're kind of going off topic a bit, and then the real argument, the thesis of the argument is like somewhere around the middle or like 3/4 of the way down, it's not going to help you. And sorry, this one's a little small as well, but then hear what it says in the late 18th century. So what it's saying here, if you don't remember the exact date, and instead of trying to guess it correctly, sometimes you could just use this. So instead of saying something happened in 1784 or 1794, vice versa, just say late 18th century and you should be fine. You want to make your argument, but if you get a year wrong, you get a detail wrong, well, it's wrong. And you can get marked off for that. Sorry, I needed to have this one a little bit bigger. Okay, chapter 6, objective tests, discriminate and eliminate. So the last chapter was more about essay tests. I hope you can see a little bit of what I'm saying about how I'm going through this book a little bit, but the author starts out by telling us about what it is to be a student, how it is to get into the mentality for the test, how to take notes, and different things. He even talks about study groups a little bit. But then later on, and especially these two chapters, 5 and 6, the author tells us about what to do whenever you're actually taking the test. So this one, chapter 6, objective tests, discriminate and eliminate. Well, as you can imagine, this one is more about math. Okay, so we get this example here, 2.3, 40, 1.5, 6, 15. So he's trying to tell us if they look kind of similar, it's probably one of those answers, So what he's trying to tell us is get rid of the most obvious answers first. And he's telling us a little bit about this process of elimination. Okay, so he gives us another concrete example. It's not, well, this one's not math, but I think this chapter is a bit more math focused. And then it says here, suppose the question as follows. The first US president to appoint a woman into the cabinet was. So here we see there's 4 presidents, and then he tells us his process of eliminating them, and that maybe you have 2 in the middle, and how you can take a best guess from there. He tells us to watch out for these words. All, always, no, never, everyone, best, worst, none, nobody. And I think that's a good suggestion because he doesn't mention it like in here, but there's always an exception to the rule, right? If you say all men are this, or all this are like this, or none of this are like this, there's always an exception. So that's not quite what he says here, but I think that's yeah. Okay, then he gives us another example for a math one, and I really like this one as well. So if you have this 334 times 412, well, maybe you can figure out very close to the answer, eliminate the other ones, and that you get the correct answer from that. So as he shows us lower on the page, it says, look, 334 times 100. Well, what's the answer to that? And if we kind of use this, we can eliminate the wrong answers, and then we have what is closest to the only possible answer from there. And I like these little math shortcuts, just saves us time. Okay. This one, chapter 7, psyching up on exam day. I like this one. You deserve a break. Now, this break means a little bit if you're taking a very long test, and then the instructor gives you some time to take a break during the test. He says take it, and I really like that suggestion. I think in college I might have taken those breaks, but I do like this in general. You deserve a break. Um, you know, if you worked hard for it, you can relax throughout this. You don't need to think, am I doing well enough, and kind of beat yourself up. Just take the break as it is, take a breather. I like it. Chapter 9, How Teachers Make Makeup Tests. Okay, and this is the part I mentioned earlier. You can't fake sincerity. I like this part. Um, if you take classes, they have a test, be enthusiastic throughout. You know, be happy you're going to be there. If you're there, enjoy it. Enjoy the fact that you're there and stuff. And I like this point. You can't fake sincerity. And it's just kind of saying, if you like to be there, the teachers will see that. And it could help out your grade a little bit. Well, then maybe the teacher might give you a few points for your enthusiasm, you know? Well, that's about it. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me discuss this book. I really think that if you're taking a course, you should pick up this book. I'm not just saying that. It would have helped me years ago, and I'm taking another course online. I am studying other things, but not all the things I'm studying will have a course, or sorry, will have a test with it. But the next time I think that I'm closer to taking a test, I will read part of this book again. It is a helpful book. Okay, with that, thank you very much for your time, and take it easy. Bye.